Do you know, the British Queen, who was only 1.52 meters tall, held the world record for the longest reign at 64 years. When she passed away, half of the royal family members across Europe were her descendants. Queen Victoria's life was like an epic filled with comebacks and glory. When she ascended the throne at 18, she was still a puppet princess under house arrest by her mother in Kensington Palace, even needing to report when going out for a walk. But in her later years, she became the symbol of the British Empire on which the sun never set. Indian princes prostrated at her feet. The African continent was dotted with British flags. This woman, known as the grandmother of Europe, bound the royal bloodlines of more than half of Europe through a single marriage, used a firm hand to let the flames of the British Industrial Revolution burn across the globe. Yet after her husband's death, she mourned her love through 39 years as a widow. When she closed her eyes in 1901, the territory of Britain had doubled compared to when she ascended the throne, and her 9 children had already embroidered the Tudor rose emblem onto the crowns of various European countries. In 1819, Victoria was born in Kensington Palace, London, and was immediately pushed to the edge of power. Her father, Prince Edward, was the 4th son of George III, originally having nothing to do with the line of succession, but with none of her 3 uncles leaving legitimate heirs. This premature baby suddenly became the substitute player. Her mother, the Duchess Victoria, in order to control her, teamed up with her lover, Sir John Conroy, to create the Kensington System, prohibiting her from seeing anyone alone, even having to share a bed with her mother when sleeping. Reading, walking, and even making friends all required approval. What was even more ruthless was that Conroy wanted her to appoint him as regent after her ascension, constantly forcing her to sign power transfer agreements. But this seemingly delicate girl filled her diary with resistance. "I will never be a puppet of anyone, not even my mother." In 1837, when the news of William IV's death arrived, Victoria was having breakfast. She put down her knife and fork and said calmly, "Now I am the queen." That afternoon, she drove to Buckingham Palace alone, shaking off her mother's and Conroy's control for the first time. Citizens on the road saw this girl in a mourning dress, thinking it was a funeral procession for some young lady. After ascending the throne, Victoria demonstrated her iron fist with a reckoning. She first moved her mother to a remote suite in Buckingham Palace, cutting off Conroy's access to the government. Then she dismissed the conservative cabinet left by her father, and appointed Lord Melbourne, the leader of the Liberal Party. This 58-year-old statesman became her political mentor, teaching her how to balance various factions in Parliament, and how to consolidate royal power under the guise of a constitutional monarchy. But Victoria's inherent assertiveness far exceeded others' imaginations. When Melbourne suggested she accept the convention, that the Prime Minister could veto the Queen's appointments, she slammed the document on the table. The Queen of England hasn't sunk so low as to be at the mercy of her ministers. She insisted on personally reviewing cabinet memoranda every week, making red pen corrections to diplomatic documents, and even sending confidants to convey her opinions during parliamentary debates. This queen, who seemed to abide by the principle of ruling but not governing, actually held the strings of power tighter than anyone else. In 1840, Victoria's wedding to her cousin Prince Albert became a national celebration in Britain. This marriage was not only a victory for love, but also a political calculation. Albert came from the German Saxe-Coburg family, related to royal families across Europe. The marriage gave Britain countless allies on the European continent. But Victoria never expected that this silent German prince would completely change her life. Albert detested the extravagance of the court, pushing her to reform royal expenditures, investing the saved money in railway construction and education. He was proficient in mechanics and science, and led the First World's Fair in 1851. The steam engines and telegraphs displayed in the Crystal Palace made Britain the benchmark of world industry. More importantly, he became Victoria's most trusted behind-the-scenes strategist, helping her screen memoranda and analyze the political situation every day, even acting as regent when she gave birth. Victoria wrote in her diary, "Without him, I couldn't last a day." This couple had 9 children together. The eldest daughter married the Crown Prince of Prussia, later Emperor Frederick III of Germany. The second son became the future Edward VII. The daughters married into the royal families of Russia, Greece, and Denmark. The title of Grandmother of Europe was foreshadowed from this time. Albert's death split Victoria's life in two. In 1861, the 42-year-old prince died of typhoid fever. Victoria, dressed in mourning, retreated to Windsor Castle, refusing to appear in public for 3 full years. Ministers were in a panic, because without the Queen's signature, new bills could not take effect. The public also began to complain our Queen has become a recluse. But few knew that her diary was filled with thoughts of her late husband. His room remained unchanged. His pajamas were ironed every day, as if he would return at any moment. It wasn't until 1872 that she reappeared in public at the urging of Prime Minister Disraeli, but never wore colored clothes again. Perhaps to continue Albert's legacy, she became unusually tough on colonial expansion. In 1877, she accepted the title of Empress of India, grasping this jewel in the crown firmly in her hands. In Africa, she supported colonial expansion, even personally approving the war against the Zulus. When accused of being overly bellicose, she coldly said, "British interests are my interests." Under Victoria's push, Britain in the Victorian era ushered in a golden age. She supported free trade, allowing textile mills in Manchester and steel mills in Birmingham to rake in huge profits. She promoted education reform. The enactment of the Elementary Education Act in 1870 sent Britain's literacy rate soaring from 30% to 70%. She even tacitly allowed Parliament to pass the Factory Act, limiting child labor hours. This queen, once thought to be out of touch with the people's livelihood, gradually understood the balance between royal power and public sentiment. Her relationships with 2 prime ministers were classic. With conservative Disraeli, she admired his romance and loyalty, even allowing him to call her "dear lady" in private letters. With liberal Gladstone, she despised his stubbornness, but still respected the results elected by Parliament. This limited compromise prevented Britain from experiencing a single revolution during her reign, making it the most stable country in Europe. But this grandmother of Europe's family hid many unknown sorrows. Her eldest son Edward was addicted to horse racing and mistresses, being scolded by her as a frivolous fool. Her daughter Alice died from caring for her husband with smallpox. Her favorite youngest son Leopold died of hemophilia at 31. More ironically, the hemophilia gene she passed on to her children later became a curse on European royal families. The son of the last Russian Tsar, Alexei, and the son of King Alfonso XIII of Spain all suffered from it. When she celebrated her 60th anniversary of Ascension in 1897, her grandchildren played on the lawn of Buckingham Palace. No one knew that these children would be embroiled in World War I in the future, and that the royal marriage network woven by their grandmother would become one of the triggers of the war. On January 22, 1901, 82-year-old Victoria passed away at Osborne House, clutching a lock of Albert's hair in her hand. At her funeral, kings and princes from across Europe lined up for 2 kilometers. German Emperor Wilhelm II, her grandson, even carried the coffin. This queen, under whose reign Britain's territory expanded to 33.67 million square kilometers, and its population increased to 400 million, was finally buried in the Frogmore Mausoleum at Windsor Castle, next to Albert. Her tombstone bore no title of Empress of India, only a simple line, Victoria and Albert 1840 to 1861. Victoria's legend lies not in how perfect she was, but in how she proved with her life that a woman could have love, family, and power all at once. Her restraint before ascending the throne, her assertiveness after ascending the throne, her transformation after her husband's death, all made the Victorian era the most dazzling label in British history. When people talk about the glory of the British Empire on which the sun never set, they will always think of that petite queen, sitting on a gilded throne, with a determined gaze, as if saying, "I am not just a queen, I am Britain." And what she left behind was not only descendants scattered across Europe, but also a set of wisdom that allowed the monarchy to survive in the democratic era, knowing when to yield, and even more so, knowing when to hold firm, knowing love, and even more so, knowing responsibility.